Jim Talamonte.
In Island Lake this morning, a crash has 176 closed in both directions between Darrell and Williams Park Roads. Inbound Kennedy, for delays start at Cumberland. It's 28 minutes, O'Hare to downtown, 14 from Montrose, 10 in the express lanes. Outbound 22 minutes to the airport. There's a slowdown between Foster and Harlan. Inbound Eisenhower, delays kick in at Manheim. 36 minutes, 390 to downtown. Outbound 35. Northbound I-55, see delays, Lorenzo Road to Blodgett. The inbound Stevenson's a little congested approaching the Ryan. Southbound I-55 is at Caton Farm to Black Road. There's a rollover semi in the right lane. The Ryan, 19 minutes, 95th to downtown. That's traffic. I'm Jim Talamonte.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. AM 560 Weather Center forecast. Cloudy this morning, then partly cloudy by the afternoon. Highs in the low 90s inland, lower 80s lakeside. 75 at O'Hare. Next news at 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson.
Florida judge yesterday granting a TRO against Governor DeSantis' order requiring school districts to reopen, saying that safety concerns had been ignored. Yeah. I like what DeSantis did. You don't have to open.
I love it.
You just won't get any state
funding.
support if you don't.
Yeah.
Why would you get state support for infrastructure
closed.
that's not being used? That seems eminently sensible. Did you see this out of Tennessee? Tennessee School District, Rutherford County, is asking parents to sign a form agreeing not to eavesdrop on kids' virtual classes over concerns that the parents, could overhear confidential information. Confidential information about their kids?
Well, CTU is afraid of the same thing. They don't want us listening to their conversations with their children because they might use bad words, Dan. And then we might disagree with what they are teaching as well.
As Lori Cardoza-Moore, founder of Proclaiming Justice to the Nation, said over the weekend, it's so hypocritical because they've been data mining our children for years, compliments of Common Core. What are they trying to hide? What's the problem? Why won't they let us in? Right, so there's some confusion within some circles in education about whose children they are, whether they belong to the state vis-a-vis the school district, or they are part of a family where the parents have primacy. There's some real confusion about that, and it's playing out in examples like this in Tennessee, where you have to sign a form to hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil if you're the parent of a child who is being mal-educated through Zoom learning.
If they're so worried about it, won't teachers get back in the classroom? And then you just brought us the information about Loyola High School shutting down for 2 weeks. They say after 6 kids became COVID positive, and I've been told by one of the students' parents, not the one that's infected, that it was possibly linked to a pool party that someone had, and she got tested, and then they social distance or the contact tracers called and had everybody get tested. But all are asymptomatic. They don't even know that they have it. I mean, they would not know if they had not gotten a test.
Mm-hmm. And this is what we said. When the standard is zero tolerance for COVID infections, zero tolerance for COVID cases is the standard to open anything, then you're going to have a problem having anything open, it turns out. Oh, and by the way, all those things that you're being told to do by the commissars that are going to stop the spread, like the 2 weeks to stop the spread back in March. All those things that may have some positive impact, may be mostly theatrical. There's not a lot of science behind. In fact, there's a lot of countervailing science in terms of the efficacy. This review of where we are in terms of the COVID-19 cases. Jacob Sullum reporting over at Reason.com on this. Looking at cases where, or states where they have restrictions in place versus states that they don't. For example, a state with no restrictions in place stayed open, that'd be Christie Nome, South Dakota, has a lower per capita death rate than does California, where they've been in and out of severe lockdowns for much of the last 6 months. Newly confirmed cases also falling in Georgia, which did not respond to the summer spike in cases with new business restrictions, like even Arizona and Texas did. The 7-day average in Georgia, which rose fivefold between May 25th and July 29th, has fallen 35% since then.
Good for them.
In Texas, the 7-day average of newly infected cases rose by tenfold between May 25th and July 15th, now has fallen by half.
And same with Arizona.
Abbott closed bars and reduced the cap on indoor dining from 75 to 50% of capacity on June 26th, yet cases continued rising for nearly 3 weeks, longer than the maximum incubation period. The story is similar in Florida. DeSantis closed bars and the same day that Abbott did in Texas. The 7-day average of new cases peaked 3 weeks later, when it was nearly 16 times higher than it was at the end of May, and then fell by 2/3 as of yesterday. So putting those restrictions in bars and restaurants, moving to closed schools, or not, and you have similar dynamics in different states. Isn't that interesting? How much we still don't know. Meanwhile, you're told with metaphysical certitude that if you wear a face diaper and you stay 6 feet apart, that there's a force field that descends around you such that you cannot get infected or infect. You're also told that if you do get infected, the way that it's covered, you're not told this explicitly, but the way that it's covered, it is still being covered like it is a death sentence to get the infection.
And speaking of face diapers or masks, WHO and UNICEF now say that children age 5 and under do not have to wear masks because they're less susceptible to COVID-19. And even kids 6 to 11, Dan, should be treated on a risk-based approach.
Why? I thought anybody could get it. I thought the 0 to 11-year-old is just as susceptible as the 85-year-old with 16 comorbidities. That's the way it's reported. That's the way the American public has come to understand it, as we talked about last week with the survey that finds that Americans absolutely misunderstand, almost 180 degrees misunderstanding of what we know to be true from now 6 months of real world experience. Could this be any more ass backward? Could this be any more mindless? And so the schools continue to close, those that even bother to open. Your livelihood, your access to your institutions of faith, to practice your faith,
singing at church,
your kids' school, so your kids' education and their intellectual development. I mean, anything to be taken away from you that actually bothers you? I mean, not our listeners, most of our listeners, but those within their social circles who are just lobotomized by fear.
Oh, we're scared of one another. This is not the America I ever thought I would live in. But the thing that we have to do is get our kids back in class. And I don't know if this new saliva testing's the answer, but we're willing. I'm willing to try anything.
Why would testing be an answer?
Because you can get immediate results right within an hour.
And so what? Then what happens?
Then if you test positive, you go home.
Right, and then they shut down the school.
Well, hopefully people with level minds won't,
Where are those people?
They're in Indiana.
Yeah, okay. Well,
no, they are.
Just as long as you're not referencing them in Illinois. I know there are level-headed people. They just don't seem to be in any positions of particular import in Illinois. All right, for more on this topic, the testing piece of it, we're pleased to be joined by University of Illinois' Dr. Martin Burke. He's a chemistry professor and lead researcher at the U of I's Saliva Test project, which has now been approved, FDA approval, emergency authorization for this saliva test, which Governor Pritzker, in his infinite wisdom, because he's a man of science and data, calls a game changer. We'll see. Dr. Burke, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and I won't pull you into my political, pontificating, but just in terms of the saliva test, give us the sort of the context of why this is an important innovation and how the application of this test could enhance the decisions that are being made about opening various aspects of our life?
Sure. So as you mentioned, we all want to get back to, teaching our students, doing research, engaging with our communities, all the things that we are passionately committed to doing as a land-grant institution. And back in March, our Chancellor, Robert Jones, and Provost Andreas Congelaris tasked me with the challenge of trying to figure out how to stand up and strategically deploy scalable and frequent testing as part of the university's goal to reopen as safely as possible. So we've been able to assemble an extraordinary team of colleagues across campus and figure out a way to do that type of testing directly from saliva. And it's actually working out really well. So we've got 20 tents popped up all over campus. It just takes a few minutes to dribble your saliva into a tube. And then we built a lab here on campus at our veterinary diagnostic labs. We do all the testing here ourselves. We're now routinely more than 10,000 tests per day, and then students find out within hours whether or not they're positive. And we've been working closely with Champaign-Urbana Public Health to, if someone does test positive, they can get kind of safely isolated for a period of time and then let everyone else continue to go about the education. So it's actually working out really well. We're really hopeful this could be a model for how to get much of society back into action. And we're looking forward to partnering with lots of other folks to help make that happen.
And Doctor, you did a pilot program in July where your positivity rate went from 1.5 to 0.2, and you're a data geek, so tell us about that.
I
love the data.
I am a data geek, but I'll tell you, this one's really powerful, right? So we ran the pilot over the summer, and faculty, students, and staff who were here, and exactly as you said, so we were at about 1.5% at mid-July, and then we watched that number drop down below 0.2. And I'll tell you, it's my favorite data plot I've ever seen because I knew at that point we had something that could help. And just to emphasize, the beauty here is, guys, this meant we could go about our business, right? The campus was open. We're doing research. People were getting educated. And people who test positive, it's just a simple, you step away for a while and go through the isolation and then come back. And so it doesn't really disrupt the whole ecosystem. And people are really well taken care of. We've got lots of partnerships with healthcare providers to make sure everybody feels safe, and honestly, even delivering food and things like this. So it can work out really well, and it allows society, to get back to all the things we love. So I think it's got a lot of potential. And also I want to mention it only works when we couple it to all of the things that are really important, like wearing face masks, keeping ourselves distanced as appropriate, washing our hands, et cetera. When you put all those things together, it can work. And University of Illinois is open, and we're really hopeful this could be a good model for others to follow.
So speed is one thing. What about accuracy, and compare the accuracy of this test to the accuracy of other tests in the market?
Great. Yeah. So we've done a whole bunch of those types of comparisons. Bottom line, we feel very confident the test is highly accurate, has extremely low false positive rate. So if it's positive, it's positive, and it allows us to be very confident that the information we have is actionable. The other thing I'll tell you, it's not binary. So it doesn't just tell you yes or no. We actually get a readout on how many copies per milliliter, per half a teaspoon of the virus are in your saliva. So you can make smart choices. If someone has a lingering positivity that's left over from an old infection, that looks very different than if someone now has like 10 billion copies per mil in their saliva. So we can make smart choices based on the data about who's really potentially a dangerous spreader and who's probably just a lingering positive that doesn't need to be isolated. So it actually gives us a lot of good information to make those kinds of decisions.
Is this also, do you also test for antibodies with this, or is that not this test in particular?
Nope, that's a different test, and this one's focused on the actual, virus RNA itself. The antibody test is a different angle to look at. Pretty much tells you whether someone had it in the past and whether they now have antibodies to protect themselves. So we're not doing that. We're doing the virus test. Yep.
So with respect to the virus, though, how do you explain or what's the comparison in terms of accuracy? We've got so many stories, and this could be sort of testing processing issues where people who didn't get tested actually but signed up to get tested didn't want to wait anymore, get letters in the mail that they tested positive for tests that take a little bit more turnaround time. And then secondarily, false positives like the bear story this week.
Sure. So there's clearly been challenges, right? I mean, I think because it's a new virus and there's been a lot of challenges associated getting the testing, up and running, et cetera. But I think at the end of the day, what we're learning is that this is really an example we kind of think about as surveillance testing where, everybody's getting tested very frequently. it allows us to have information to understand the level of the virus in the whole community. It's not really necessarily about, each individual test. It's really about the whole program. And I think that's one of the ways we could kind of start to think about it is, to get our businesses open, get our kids back in schools, if we can just have a better sense, right, of what the actual situation is, it gives us a much better ability to make smart decisions and really try to keep things open as safely as possible.
So because you have the saliva test, is there in-person learning going on at University of Illinois?
Yes, and we're very happy to say that that's true. And our goal is to stay open. So we've been thinking, obviously the goal is to first get the school open and get the new students onboarded. We brought 50,000 students back into our community, which was obviously a really big challenge. But we did that, knowing that there was going to be an increase in cases and knowing that our new saliva test combined with those other mitigation strategies I described, collectively know it's going to come back down. And so, we're bracing and we understand it's a challenging time, but we are really hopeful that we can get through it. And yes, our plan is to stay open. And I also want to emphasize that means our community stays open. Our businesses continue to get, students coming in. And I'll tell you a great story that I think is just such a great example of how partnering with local communities and businesses can really work. So we've got a great bar here in town called Joe's Brewery, where we have an app that we developed for our students where in order for them to be able to get into class, you have to show they're up to date with their testing. So the bar owner decided to use that to allow students to come into the bar safely. And he put a bunch of tables outside and, the students are socializing safely, right? Catching up on their summer and excited about their classes. And they're all doing it safely because the bar owner very innovatively decided to check their app on the way in. So just really cool stuff like that. I'll tell you one more. I was driving home the other night past a row of fraternity houses. We tend to come down hard on our students when they make bad decisions. So I'll tell you about a really heartening one. I was driving by and the fraternity brothers had pulled out a ping pong table out on the front yard. They're standing out in the front yard wearing their masks, hammering away at the ping pong table, and it looked like they were having a good time. So I think there's lots of really great ways that young people can really show us, right? I mean, they're going to inherit the future of our country, and so I think we got to believe in our young people, work together, find ways to socialize safely. Right. I think the message isn't don't socialize. I mean, young people want to get together and, it's part of being a young person. So figuring out a way to socialize safely and just making reasonable choices. I think we can all get back to some of the things that we're hungry for.
What about COs and CAMs? If I go down to U of I, I'm old school. I have to go to those bars. So what are they doing? I want to be the creepy old guy at CAMs.
Yeah. I don't know yet, but we've heard that this concept is spreading and that other bars and restaurants are catching on. So, it's I think it's been a really amazing kind of community partnership. We've been working very closely with Mayor Finan and Mayor Marlin, just trying to think about reasonable, thoughtful, strategic things that can be done so that we can stay open. We're thinking about it's like an investment, right? We're kind of investing in the whole semester as opposed to, what's happening day by day. We're trying to think about this holistically. And, if we succeed, everybody wins. That's kind of how we're thinking about it. And we've gotten a lot of attention statewide and nationally, as you mentioned in your opening. We're very hopeful if we all work together and everybody does their part, we can succeed. And then we could have a model, right, that others could follow to help other schools open too.
Yeah, particularly elementary and high schools, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Think about it, right? You got a generation of young people. We gotta get them educated and do it safely. Yep.
All right. He is Dr. Martin Burke. He's a chemistry professor and lead researcher of U of I's Saliva Test Project. Dr. Burke, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks, Doctor. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I know that on those tablets Mr. Moses brought down is the commandment to not covet. But I'll confess, my neighbor and his lawnmower is making it tough. He's got this stand-behind, ride-along space shuttle that covers probably 3